Ladies and gentlemen, our next topic is Second Chance, the conservative stance on criminal justice reform. Please welcome Republican Study Committee Chairman Mark Walker and ACU Foundation Center for Criminal Justice Reform, Pat Nolan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. As you saw from that video, we've got a system that's broken, and we lock up over 2 million people in this country, and sadly, over 40% of them are arrested for a new crime within 3 years. So the system isn't working to keep us safer, even though we're spending billions, $68 billion of it. A quarter of the Department of Justice's budget just goes for the Bureau of Prisons instead of money for the FBI, counterterrorism, courts. We're going to have an interesting conversation today. Congressman Walker brings an interesting background to Congress. He heads up the Republican Study Committee, which is the conservative caucus in the House, but he was a pastor's kid and then a pastor himself. Devoting his life to serving the people through God's kingdom. He then decided he could further serve God and our country by going to Congress. And he's been a remarkably strong leader within Congress. And I'd like to introduce him to you now to tell a little about his experience.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. It's my privilege to be here with all of you today. Always get inspired by the energy here at CPAC. There were two major events in my life that kind of made me stay focused on these important issues, that all life matters to God. I can remember being the oldest son of a Baptist preacher in a smaller community. My father was the prison chaplain as well. And I can recount to this day times where I was literally sitting on the bunks of many of these men and a few women that were incarcerated, hearing their story time after time, how just a small decision, a poor decision, and with the justice system, the way that it's been developing, beginning to put them on a path of a really non-recovery. The second component was, as a younger pastor, taking our teams to the inner cities, places like Cleveland, in New York and Baltimore. Specifically, I remember one meeting that we had with the organization in Cleveland, Ohio, and we said, what's the one thing that we can bring to the inner city to help support? He said, just bring hope. Just bring hope. Those things, and making this transition some 3 years ago, to talk about from the perspective that if all life is important, then we as conservatives, we as Republicans need to be working to make sure that all life matters, whether it's the incarcerated individual, whether it's the unborn child, whether it's elderly. And I believe if we're going to continue to talk about the brokenness of the family and how we pull people out of welfare reform, we cannot ignore the criminal justice system either.
That's absolutely right, Congressman. I was blessed to work for Chuck Colson for 20 years and learned a lot from him. And he quoted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, to change someone, you must first love them, and they must know that you love them. Well, government programs can't love people. Only people can love people. And the mentoring of good, moral people from the community, sacrificing to come into prison, work with the prisoner, and to stay with them when they get out, to help them with the difficult decisions, makes all the difference in the world. And that's part of President Trump's agenda on prison reform. We've found that, as Ken Cuccinelli said in the video, it's conservatives that need to lead on this. None of us trust the liberals to do it right. They've gotten us in the mess, and we're the ones to lead them out. And Texas, then South Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, North Dakota, Alaska, I'm leaving out some other states, have led the way on this. In Texas, they reserve prison beds, in South Carolina too, for those that we're truly afraid of. Those that we're just mad at, they correct in the community, supervise them, have drug tests, but they can stay with their family, they can keep a job. They're not dependent on the government. And what they've done in Texas is they've been able to close 8 prisons saved $3 billion, but most important, the crime rate is the lowest it's been since 1967. And that's the important part. We need to keep the public safe. That's got to be our first priority. And we do that, but we can show by making better decisions about who goes to prison, how we prepare them for re-entering the community, we can do that and save the taxpayers a bunch of dollars.
There's no question. There is both a family component of this and there's a fiscal responsibility to this. And both of these things merge together when it talks about the respect for and the dignity of human life. You talked about that and just touched on it as far as our role. Certainly as legislators, we have some legislation, Sentencing Reform, Second Chance Act. All of these drive it. Some of the states, even my home state, North Carolina, when Speaker Tillis was the Speaker of the House there, reduced the prison population by 8%, saving taxpayers $48 million right there in the state of North Carolina. But there's an element to this that we cannot miss, and here's why I believe it's so important. We as Republicans, when we enter these areas to talk about, we're immediately branded as bigot or homophobe, whatever the latest topic, racist they might call. It's important for conservatives to pick up the mantle because we have a message that is good for all communities. The message of individual, liberty, hope, opportunity. But the way that we're able to do that, and this is something that I've been preaching for 3 years since I've been here in the U.S. Congress, it is the individual, our responsibility to get out there, and here's how we do it. We do not have media outlets, or very many, that's going to be out there getting our message out there. The only way to do that I have found, is to build genuine relationships. Do not be afraid to go into places that have never heard our message. Psalms 139 tells us that all people are created and wonderfully, fearfully and wonderfully made. That we're all created with unique skill sets and abilities and giftedness. That is a message that's good for all communities, but here's the secret, in my opinion. If it's just about making an argument for Republicans, we will fail. All of us should be called to ultimately make a difference. And sometimes that means we have to augment our ability to go beyond just preaching to the choir. It's great to be gathered. It's great to have that energy and understand that we have a battle at hand. But I often think of Nehemiah. Nehemiah told us when they're having to rebuild the wall, they had a sword in one hand and they had a stone to build the wall in the other hand. And ultimately, even though I'm here at CPAC, if I could work a little sermon in there, ultimately we're called to be warriors and builders. And through God's path of guidance, we can be both.
Absolutely. And our message is one of hope. We go to areas riven by crime and say to them, there is a way out. You don't give up on your young people. None of us want to be judged by the worst decision we've ever made. We believe in second chances. Jesus died to give us all a second chance. And so we say to them, we'll work with you. We'll help your youngster. We'll try to help him get a job. We'll help him make moral decisions. We'll back you up as a parent to reinforce your leadership in the family. And with that generous love, without talking political ideology, we give our witness by our actions.
It has to be genuine. You think about this, there are 2.3 million children that have a parent that's incarcerated right this very moment. You have a pattern that follows from one generation to the next. If we look at that strictly from a judgment mindset, we are failing as Republicans, we're failing with conservatives, we're failing as believers. We have to look at this from a compassionate standpoint. Now, when people commit crimes, they should be locked up, they should fulfill the sentences, but we've gotten to a place where that young person that gets pulled over for the first time with his older brother or his cousin, they've got weed in the car, and he begins this journey. He couldn't make the court appearance. He didn't know how to pay the $40 of the probation officer every single month. And on goes a life that should be full of dignity and promise to veer off to this system. And here's the thing. We have seen this happen more where there's progressive ideology in our larger inner cities more than we've seen anywhere else. So there is a false message of hope being delivered or being preached by the left, one that has not had the results. Conservatives can lead on this issue.
Amen. Amen. Preach it, brother. It's so important that we say to them, there are moral truths. Young kids are looking for boundaries. They're looking, and we can say to them, you know, you can turn your life around, and we're here to help you, but it has to be a moral decision. When you decide to harm somebody else, that's a sin. It breaks God's heart. It breaks his peace, the shalom of the community. And we need to call them to account for that. But then in love, we need to reach out and say, we'll help you turn your life around so you don't make those immoral decisions again.
Absolutely.
And the government can't do that. Only people from the community can.
No, and we have legislation, as I talked about, that needs to be able to take about and curb that pattern from adults. But really we're talking about, and not to be too passe or too weak on a conversation here, we're talking about getting involved in building that relationship, not from a political gain, but one from a human perspective that offers us promises, that offers hope for people from all of our communities. And I believe as Republicans, we've had some opportunities that we've missed on. We've always thought that just because we have the truth, that ultimately that's the only thing that matters. Yet what we have to think about and rethink is sometimes how to get that conduit. Because here's the thing, we don't get a chance to start with a level playing field. If you look at the difference here between the progressive ideology and conservative ideology, whether it's the education and indoctrination that we've seen, whether it's through media, arts and entertainment, Republicans start with a deficit. So when we first try to come in and try to introduce the latest program or policy, it doesn't work because there's no trust built up. What we have to do as Republicans is we have to get that back up to that level playing field to then be able to talk about or earn the right to share what it is that we believe in those communities. I'm incredibly proud to represent the largest historical black college and university in the country, North Carolina A&T. In fact, Senator Tim Scott and I next week are bringing 85 chancellors. These are the issues. These fields are fertile right now to be able to talk about. The reason we can is because we have 50 years of failed left-wing, liberal, crazy ideology that has negatively impacted home ownership among some of our communities, the economic side, job growth, unemployment. We have a moment in time here to be able to drive our message home, to do it with the right heart and the right spirit, and I think that we can still see some good results in the future.
I absolutely agree with that. You know, one of the things that's important is the bureaucracy makes some decisions that are very destructive of families. We touched on it in the video there. We shackle women during childbirth. That's barbaric.
Yes.
Absolutely barbaric. And we take the children from them. Some prisons don't even let the mother hold her newborn baby. And every psychiatrist will tell you that it's the bond that forms. Here, this precious baby has been in the womb for 9 months, and when the mother holds the baby on her chest, they feel the same rhythm of breathing. They feel the same heartbeat. That reassures them that they're connected. And to deny the child her parent so young makes no sense. Also the rape, you saw Marilyn Shirley there. She was raped by a guard. We take away people's ability to defend themselves when they go to prison. They're dependent on the government to protect them, and they let her down.
And it goes back to either we believe that all life matters or we don't. Nobody believes that more than conservatives. Whether it's life in the womb. I remember a year and a half ago, I was sitting on the House Oversight Committee. Cecile Richards is sitting about 15 feet in front of me, and I asked her, I said, Ms. Richards, does it bother you that there are more African American babies aborted in the state of New York than actually born? You think about that. All life should matter, and if it does, Republicans and conservatives need to be consistent across the board, whether it's those that are incarcerated, those in the womb, whether it's the senior adult age, whether it's euthanasia, whatever it might be. We need to be the champions, and we need to be the ones leading on these issues.
Absolutely. And we need your help. Part of the theme of CPAC this year is take action. If you go to our website, which is conservativejusticereform.com, you can sign up there. We'll keep you informed of the good legislative initiatives and also good initiatives by departments of corrections that are doing it right, programs that'll involve you in mentoring. You personally can make a difference in these lives, and we'll help plug you into that. And we implore you to come stand with us. As Cuccinelli said, it's conservatives that need to lead on this, and we are, and we'd love for you to join us in it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's a privilege to be with you folks today. God bless you. Thanks for giving us a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.